Welcome, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us this Sunday afternoon. My name is Cassandra Powell. I am the Executive Director of Light of Loving Kindness. So what is Light of Loving Kindness? We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization located in Chicago. We're on the south side of Chicago. We provide holistic integrative solutions. Some people would say that is complementary, alternative, integrative, perhaps traditional, some might say, some might even say indigenous methods of medicine, non-pharmaceutical. So that's what we do. Where do we do it? We provide services in communities that have low income, communities that are trauma affected, communities that are underserved. We have a host of practitioners that work with us. And in addition to these services, we also work with hospitals and with behavioral health organizations. And we provide care for caregivers as well. We work in palliative care. So that is what Light of Loving Kindness is, and this is what we do. If you go to our website, www.lightoflovingkindness.org, you will see a tab that says the science of healing. And if you look on there, you will see scientific data, medical studies about the modalities that we offer. So once again, you can take a look there. And I also want to talk just a little bit about Utopia Connect. And I'm going to introduce you to Muriel Baptiste in just a moment. So Utopia Connect is our partner. Utopia Connect Foundation, I want to say the whole name, is our partner in this venture. And I'm going to introduce you to Muriel Baptiste in just a moment. But I would also like to say that if you have the ability to donate to Light of Loving Kindness or to Utopia Connect Foundation, we would appreciate it so tremendously. It would help us to keep these programs free. One Breath Chicago is a 3-month program. We are in the first month right now. This is the 3rd week. We have 2 more live stream events. Next week, we have a panel with all men talking about your breath and anger management. We have a week following with all women on a panel talking about your breath and anger management. And then in February, we are going to host breath videos every day at 3 p.m., 7 days a week. If you could donate even $5, a $5 donation, if 1,000 people donate $5, yay, it would really help us to support us and pay for these programs. So if you can, please do. No amount is too small, and definitely no amount is too large. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Muriel Baptiste from Utopia Connect Foundation.
Thank you, Cassandra. You did an amazing job sharing, and thank you for what you do. Your services are definitely vital to our community. The Utopia Connect Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit as well, and we're on the north side of Chicago, so we're hitting both north and south and all in between. Our goal is to focus on community wellness, and the things that we can do is in volunteer service. Today, it's One Breath Chicago, and trying to figure out how to keep our community whole. I wanted to just mention, because Cassandra mentioned about giving, please do give so we can continue running these services. But one of the audiences that we wanted to make sure that we're tailoring our sessions to is our young people. They're very dear to my heart, and I hope they're out there listening today and can benefit from these services. Today is about self-care, and if there's ever been a time or need for self-care, it's now. And I just want to mention that researchers predict that by 2025, the biggest healthcare crisis we will have is mental health. And that's big. And it also means that nonprofits like ours and services within our community, social services, need to be thinking about mental health care and self-care. So today is one of those that I hope that our entire community can come out and benefit from One Breath Chicago. And thank you to all of our presenters today for just focusing on self-care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muriel. So today we have a wonderful panel for you. Let's get started without further ado. In just a moment, I am going to introduce you to GuruNischan, and then GuruNischan will introduce you to everyone and our conversation will begin. But I want to let you know at the end of this discussion today, we are going to offer a breathwork practice that is focused specifically for young people. I would say ages 9 through 17. However, it is still going to be a wonderful breath practice, even if you have a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old. You'll be able to adjust it for younger children. And it's also going to be great for adults. So the last 10 minutes of this panel, Liz is going to take us through this practice. She's going to give us a little education, teach us a little bit, some visualization, and she's going to take us through this breathwork practice. So remember, if your kids aren't watching, grab them the last 10 minutes of this live stream today. Okay, now I'd like to introduce you to GuruNischan Khalsa. There she is. All righty. GuruNischan's pronouns are she and her. GuruNischan is sure to capture your breath and attention with over 20 years experience teaching and training on a global stage. She delivers science-backed strategies for rewiring the brain-body communication network and improving your everyday operating system. Raised outside of the medical and food models of mainstream America, GuruNischan has a unique perspective on health and human potential. She offers a direct access point to plug into the simple science of being a well-made human. And without further ado, I am turning this over to GuruNischan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, to be facilitating a wealth of wisdom in the arena of understanding our breath and understanding how to include ourselves in the arena of care. Without further ado, I really want to introduce the panel that we have today. And I want to begin with Akhu Ausar. His pronouns are he and him. He's a holistic health professional and former U.S. Marine. Founded Akhu Ausar's Holistic Lifestyle Transformational Academy to help members transform into more of what they were placed on this planet to be, themselves. He provides yoga instruction, Reiki, massage healing, holistic dietary consultation, and more to individuals, families, and organizations seeking powerful methods to heal and create order and balance, as well as advance their mental, physical, and emotional health. Akhu seeks to be a light on the path of those looking to increase the quality of their everyday life. The second panelist we have today is Nubia Henderson. Her pronouns are she and her. She is a certified yoga instructor who teaches that self-love is the foundation for all positive changes in relationships, especially within ourselves and our communities. After the birth of her daughter, Nubia was really challenged to live her yoga and return to her roots of West African dance, yoga, and meditation. Her journey of self-love and passion for children led her to create Kids Jam, her signature child-centered classes combining music and movement. Her goal is for families to understand the principle of yoga and use the tools in their everyday lives. Our third panelist today is Suzy Galaska. Her pronouns are she and her, and she's a breathwork facilitator, Reiki educator, pleasure advocate, and space holder. She believes in normalizing the human emotional experience and destigmatizing trauma and mental health through love, touch, breath, and community. Our fourth panelist today is Liz Smith. Her pronouns are she and her, and she's the founder of Serendipity Yoga and Wellness. She's an experienced yoga teacher, elementary educator, and mindfulness instructor. He works with her clients of all ages from 2 years old to 90. With a warm and open heart, she creates a safe and welcoming space where each person's yoga and mindfulness experience is allowed to grow and thrive. So first of all, I just want to welcome you all for being here and thank you for taking the time out to be a part of this discussion about self-care and the importance and understanding of even why our breath matters. So thank you, One Breath Chicago, for even having this event. Let's begin with sharing, what does self-care even mean? Like, what is self-care and how does breath play a part of what our understanding of self-care could be? So Suzy, would you mind taking this to begin?
Sure, thank you, GuruNischan. So to me, self-care is an act or a thought. It's a way of bringing yourself back into this alliance and balance in our mental, physical, and spiritual selves. I think self-care can be disciplined. It can be very layered and multifaceted. It can be very subtle. It can be very extravagant. But for me, it's about reducing harm, reducing self-sabotage, and nurturing a really healthy resilience towards life's really hard emotional experiences. And there's this beautiful link between life and breath. So as our bodies get imprinted with, heartache and anger and dehumanization, our breath becomes short and stuck and in those spaces. It just lands in our chest and creates this greater panic and pain. And so breath gives us an attainable and free, it's all ours, way to rewire our nervous system so that these painful moments lose their charge, allowing us to have a better awareness of our body, how it reacts, how it serves us, how it serves others, bringing us back into that balance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Who else would like to take on, what does self-care even mean and how does breath relate to it for you?
Well, I'll offer up what it means for me. As you shared in my bio, I really feel that self-love is the key to all things. And so I equate self-care and self-love as one and the same. I know there are a lot of selves and we define them differently, but on my journey, I equate it to be one and the same. And I kind of took a little bit of notes because for me, self-care leads to greater self-awareness, which leads to greater self-regulation. And that's where we get into the tools of, as an example, the breath, right? Using the breath as a way to kind of stabilize and get greater control of your emotions and regulate yourself. And so for me, I guess if I'm thinking about like the order of it, self-care really gets to the crux of that. Like, what is it that I can access immediately to tap into what it is that I need to love on myself and care for myself?
Thank you. Thank you. Akhu, would you mind speaking to how does self-care show up for you as a man?
That was great answers to Nubia and Suzy. Thank you all. I agree with what you all said. It's kind of like self-care it can show up in a myriad of ways. The reality is that we have to get present. We have to be present enough to see how self-care is showing up and asking you to care for yourself. So this is, with the breath is always present. It's always here in the moment of now. So if my mind is thinking about tomorrow or yesterday, then I'm not going to be aware of how I need to care for myself right now. So to me, self-care is being present. If I'm present, I trust that I'm going to know what to do. For instance, if a mosquito tries to come in my eye, my eyes will close. My eyelashes, it's already built in. So to me, self-care is just being present and trusting what you're going to know what to do. It's already built inside of us.
I want to kind of tie what I heard all three of you say and ask, in including self in the realm of care, in a world where we're really, really busy and our attention is outward and we're told almost to take care of everybody else and everything else besides ourselves, how would you support listeners to put themselves in the front of the line when a lot of our conditioning can be almost to put ourselves last?
Little things. Do one little thing different every day or today even. in this moment and now. Just do something that you don't normally do. Maybe stop for 30 seconds a day and take deep breaths. Make a commitment to do that. Just little things, nothing major.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll follow up on that. The little things with the little things. I think that self-care is often viewed as very indulgent, and that it has to be something bigger than it is. And it could be as simple as singing in your car. You know, it could be very tiny little movements. So I'm definitely feeling that as well. Yeah.
Thank you. How has self-care changed perhaps since the pandemic has begun? Like, what would you support listeners to do self-care when we might feel a little more restricted with the things we want to do for our self-care?
I can jump in there, GuruNischan. I think that for many people, our entire lives have shifted and transformed over the last 10 and a half months. And in some cases, there is less time available to us because perhaps we have children at home that we are now finding ourselves educating as well as, and participating in that process. But in other ways, there's more time freed up for us, and to really think about those activities that are perhaps more sustainable to us than, say, personally, before the pandemic, I might have thought of getting a massage or a facial or going for a pedicure or out for dinner might be my self-care. And that's not necessarily sustainable because there isn't always money for all of that. And so it became more hit or miss. I've really found I've turned inward to myself, to the things that I can access for free and at home regularly. And that's really transformed everything for me. So as we've talked about, breath work, free. I can do myself at any point during my day, not necessarily. And cooking. I never cooked prior to the pandemic, and that has become one of my #1 forms of meditation and self-care, and medication, as the slip of the tongue has gone, because food is beautiful medicine. And just taking the love and care to put into my food and into the time to listen to music and make it an experience in, just as Akhu said, being present. That it's not another meal I have to throw on the table and just to shove food in my mouth. Like, there's love.
Yeah, so I'm really hearing this theme of having more awareness to the everyday simple things that already are available to us, as opposed to kind of this approach where I'll do something special, that my self-care is something special, where really self-care can be wrapped into our everyday experience of being here in our lives that used to feel mundane.
And I think that that's the key. It's that everyday moments provide an opportunity for us to really turn the ordinary into sort of a ritual, so to speak. Liz spoke about having to go outside the home. Personally, from my hair to my facial to anything that is going on with my body that I may have outsourced, I now have to take time, to do those things. And I relish in that, right? Because a lot of times when you typically ask somebody about self-care, they may mention the physical things. It may not be the breath. But the deeper I go into self-care, I'm finding all those things are intrinsically linked. And I'm going to kind of piggyback a little bit off of what Akhu and Suzy, what we've all been saying. It actually is really simple. And my personal thing for this year, because even as a practitioner, right, I have to be reminded, one breath, one moment at a time. And those breaths, those moments, they create time of ritual, right, around whatever it is that I need, or I'm discovering that I need to take care of my body, to parent my daughter, to show up better at work. So I think it is really simple, and it's in those everyday moments.
I really like that. It's simple, the ritual of everyday moments. On that, will someone speak of why breath? Why is breath so important in our understanding of self-care? Akhu, why don't you start us off since you all are so eager?
Okay. My thing, so I teach yoga, and I got a platform set up because I know we're going through. So I just have my platform here. I roll out the carpet, and people have this as an option. And I do it because I do yoga, but it's not really yoga. I'm really just helping people to breathe because that's the issue. So when a person, like we were talking about earlier, when a person's angry or frustrated or something happens, I think you said it, Nubia, they stop breathing or people just pause and they're holding that breath. And we don't realize we're holding our breath. We're not breathing. So what I do, I tell people every day, I'd be like, hey, turn upside down, twist your body, invert, and then take a breath. And it's metaphors. It's a metaphor. So whatever you do on a yoga mat, in life, you're going to do the same thing. So in a challenging situation, breath, and we don't realize we're holding our breath. We're not breathing. So what I do, I tell people every day, I'd be like, hey, turn upside down, twist your body.
We need to hear that again.
Allergy.
That's what we needed. That was like, listen.
I didn't even know I could do that. Yoga mat. In life, you're going to do the same thing. So in a challenging situation, and we don't realize we're holding our breath. We're not breathing. So what I do, I tell people every day, I'd be like, hey, turn upside down, twist your body.
We need to hear that again.
Allergy.
That's what we needed. That was like, listen.
I didn't even know I could do that. In life, you're going to do the same thing. So
well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Akhu, please stop for just a moment. Can everyone mute their mics, please?
We need to hear that again.
Allergy.
Can every
Okay. Thank you. All right. So yeah, I was just saying that what I'm doing is, and I think the work that we have to do is to get people to breathe in these challenging situations when there's no problem. So there was a motto that I learned from the military, which is cool. It was great. I like it because it said to train hard in times of peace so that you bleed less in times of war. And I translate that to my life today. So when I'm not stressed out, let me jump on this yoga mat. Because there's been times in my life where I've been at the edge of destruction, it felt like. And the only thing I had was a yoga mat. Let me go do some yoga before I lose it. And I would do my yoga, and it's like being at the edge, about to tip over. I do a yoga session, it's like 10 steps back. So after seeing that result, that the breath is actually creating space between my traumas and the things I'm scared of and worried about, I give myself more breath. So I just practice more and more and more and more to create so much breath that the space between me and what I used to consider was destruction is too far for me to even notice. And then you can be present. Then you can get on with your life when you're not afraid, you're not worried about tomorrow. Kind of just let it go. It's gonna do what it's supposed to do. I don't know. But I'm good, Right now, tomorrow might be terrible. Yesterday might have been terrible. But essentially right now I'm good. I'm pretty good. I'm through. I'm not starving. My family's pretty good. We're good.
So I like that. I like that you're saying essentially create a reservoir at times when it's not always so stressful so that we have something to draw on that's like a sourcing within ourselves when things get tougher out externally. And does anyone else want to add to like why specifically is breath so important when we're talking specifically in this understanding of what self-care is about and how we create rituals of self-care? Liz?
Got it.
Oh, I can take it, but Suzy, I noticed you unmuted too. But so when we look just scientifically, anatomically at what's happening in our bodies, when we're stressed, our nervous system, which is composed of our nerves, our brain, and all those beautiful electrical impulses that travel through us, when we are stressed, we, as has been mentioned before, we start to tighten, we breathe more shallowly, and if we don't breathe, we die, very simply. And the more shallowly we breathe, the more on a cellular level, we are starting to, in the cells, we're starting to die, to pull away from this life. And so when we take deep breaths, when we really start to pay attention to how we feel, from those tiny cells all the way up to our entire being. We are more alive, we're more nourished with life, and we are transforming ourselves. And what happens when we breathe deeply is our nervous system, a different part of our nervous system is enacted, and that's the part that allows us to rest and to digest and to be able to come into that present moment. And so this starts on a very cellular level and moves into that bigger space of our own being and is reflected out into everyone around us. Because when we take deep breaths and calm down, that can impact everyone else. We've all had those moments where we just see someone and know that they are in a bad mood. We don't even have to interact with them. We know that they're stressed. And we know that when someone is in a good place, we can feel that as well. And that breath can start to shift what we experience with ourselves and how others experience us.
What would you say to someone that says, aren't we automatically breathing? So like, what do you mean breathe? Like we breathe all the time.
There's something called what you just mentioned, Liz, cellular breathing. And cellular breathing is conscious breathing. So like you said, GuruNischan, you can breathe. You're going to breathe, all right? So you're alive, you're breathing. So it's going to happen. However, it's like a dance. Some people are out of step. And if you're out of step with the breath, guess what? Everything follows the breath. So if you get the breath to become smooth and steady and rhythmic and complete, your life will follow. It's really simple. And that is conscious breathing. Conscious breathing is cellular breathing. Now you're breathing into your cells directly. You have millions and billions of cells. Now you're giving them a wave of fresh oxygen and fresh life force energy. So yeah, you're doing it on automatic, but that's not the same as conscious breathing. There's a whole nother world. And a lot of us aren't aware, so yeah, we just inform. I would inform.
So speaking specifically of conscious breathing or mindful breathing, can conscious breathing help with maybe improving sleeping? Suzy, do you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, there was actually a study done a few years ago that says that if we can switch our action or the thought process in our head when we're chattering, when it's just constantly going, that voice that's going in our head that can often not allow us to sleep. Well, it's our voice, it's our little roommate up there, and they can get kind of annoying, and you need to distract yourself from that voice. And there's a study recently that was put out that you just need as minimum as 2 minutes of distraction in order for that to kind of calm that voice. And so for breath, it's a really awesome, again, going back to simple way of having a conscious awareness of the breath and having something to focus on versus those voices that might be keeping you up or whatever emotions that might be running through your body at that time. It's giving your body a chance to rest. And the beautiful thing about breath work is you need to rest, it'll give your body a chance to rest. And if you need it to be energetic, it'll let your body be energetic. And some of the things that we say a lot in the breathing community is every breath is clearing. And so when we take those breaths, if we just kind of think of it as every breath, letting it clear and wash over us, it could be as simple as a big deep breath, or it can be as elaborate as a big trance breath. But just 2 minutes sometimes, and that can get your brain to calm down and go to sleep. So yeah, definitely works.
Thank you. Nubia, would you mind speaking to how breathing can specifically be incorporated into, say, a daily self-care practice, like other than, say, deep breaths? What would be another example of like how you incorporate breathing into your self-care routine, or maybe that you would support children to include in their self-care routine?
Okay. One thing that I first would say, of course, is as parents, practice and normalize your children seeing you practice. And specifically, and I know for me, because we talked about during this time, like what's been happening, our breath has definitely been an anchor. So in the times of COVID, there are lots of stressors, right? In addition to parenting, I would say in a moment where typically you may, as a parent, lean into um, yelling or anything, however you discipline your child, lean into a moment of, I'm going to consciously stop. I'm going to take in a full breath and I'm going to count down from 10. And what that's doing is it's allowing you to model for your child self-regulation, but literally, whether you count to 10, you can count to 10 verbally, it's giving you time to kind of bring yourself back to a normal state. If you're vocalizing your counting, it gives your child an opportunity to kind of connect, see what you're doing, witness it. And as Liz said, it kind of levels the playing field. So the first thing that I would say is just allow your child to see you with your breath practice and make it fun. I'm going to show something. I know Liz is going to do, she's going to do an exercise with this, but this is a Huberman sphere. So, with children, you have to make it fun. So you can use the spear as a beautiful visual, and Liz is going to show us later. You can also use your hands. Sometimes we do bubbles. You can do balloons. So there are a myriad of ways that you can play around with and explore the breath, with your children. But I would definitely say counting is a beautiful way. Another one is shapes, right? Whether you want to use a square, right? So inhale, exhale, inhale, and exhale, and just keep that going. Another way is to incorporate songs, right? So if you have a favorite song, you can count with that song and keep the pace with that song. So there is no right or wrong way, but the key when we're talking about children is modeling and fun. Those are the two things that I would say parents need in their toolkit.
I really like that. I like the modeling that we can't expect our children or anyone to do something that we're not showing up to do and model, but also keeping it fun. And I think even for ourselves, like keeping our self-care routines fun is one of the ways we can stay engaged in them instead of like, this is something I have to do, right? It's incorporating lots of ways that become nourishment, self-nourishment and nourishing our environment. I would like to add in that there's a lot of science specifically on breathing through the nose. And I assume that, because this is a panel of experts, sometimes we assume that everybody gets that already. I'm wondering if anyone wants to jump in on, I know there's different types of breath. Sometimes we breathe through the nose, sometimes through the mouth. Are there any other techniques you want to, or just things you want to offer that can support someone who's brand new to learning simple ways to incorporate conscious breathing into their daily life as a form of self-care, besides like just breathing, but maybe not understanding the full mechanics of breathing yet?
Well, one of the things that blew my mind when I was first discovering the breath is learning that when we inhale, our heart rate increases slightly, and then when we exhale, our heart rate decreases slightly. And so when we talk about breathing, with a lot of practices, we'll talk about either balancing the inhale and the exhale to bring them into a level playing field, or to lengthen those exhalations. And when I learned that the reason we lengthen exhalations is to slow the heart rate down and put our nervous system back into regulation, pulling it out of dysregulation, it blew my mind. And so just a really simple practice that you can incorporate right away is just to notice how long your breath in it takes, and notice how long your breath out takes, and notice and observe, are you equal? Is one longer than the other? And then it's a fun game. Like Nubia said, like it's a game then. Can I make my breath out a little bit longer than my breath in? How much longer can I make my breath out than my breath in without causing my body stress? Another note too that comes up time and time again with my clients is that when we watch or listen to breath recordings, when we're in a yoga practice, we're given certain cues about breathing. And not every breath works for every person's lungs, nervous system, body in the moment. And so for me, what I always come back to and say time and again is that when we're breathing, we don't, generally speaking, want to put more stress on the body. There are certain breathing practices that will do that, but more often than not, we want to find a pattern of breath that is supporting us in finding ease, as opposed to finding that dysregulation or lack of ease, that dis-ease.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Akhu, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. So looking at just taking a look at a baby. You look at a baby when they're born, they're laying on their backs and their belly is expanding on the inhale, it's falling on the exhale, and it's coming from the belly. The mind plays a great part in our development as adults, because as adults we go through life and we grow in concerns and issues and traumas and things that we experience. So we come out of our belly and we begin to breathe from our chest. And we oftentimes, a lot of us, our mouths are open, and it's, to me, it's, we're losing energy. And the reason why I tell and promote people, especially, you know, in a yoga practice, I start my classes, first breathe through your mouth, take some clearing breaths, maybe 5 or 6 breaths. But for the next, after that, the rest of the class, 50 minutes or whatever, however long it is, we're breathing through the nose. The nose has, it grows hairs to filter out toxins from our environment. It's essentially us recycling this uber powerful life force energy that we call the breath. The breath is, you know, it's really, when you study and get into it, they call it the chi in the East, or prana in India, and, you know, it can even be considered, you know, the intelligence of the universe is really how I look at it, because most of the universe is empty space. And I'm saying that empty space is not really empty, it's the breath. And if we were to breathe it in consciously, we win. When we stop breathing, we lose. So that's my, you know, recommendation to people who are, you know, having concerns about how to breathe, where do I breathe from. Generally speaking, breathe through your nostrils. Trust that. And, you know, if you feel you gotta breathe differently, do it differently. Stay present and do what it tells you.
Thank you for that. I know we've really touched a lot on the importance of including our breath and the basic important physiology as well as science around including breath in our self-care practices. Will someone speak to what are some other mindfulness practices that you do for your self-care routine, hourly or daily? Like, what does your routine look like besides breath?
So for me, I would say journaling is a huge part. I don't know who this quote is attributed to, but the quote goes, "Thoughts disentangle themselves through the pen." And I know for me, being able to write things down really helps me to work through something that I'm trying to understand. It helps me be creative, communicate. I mean, it's everything. So for me, journaling is a really huge one. Not a Middle Eastern practice, but I'm going to add, I have recently started weight training. And this actually ties back into the self-care piece, because as I weight train, right, though I do yoga to strengthen my knees and other aspects of my body, the heavier weight I lift, the more conscious I am of my breath, because as Akhu said, my mind is like, oh, I don't know about this. And then my breath stops. The heavier the weight got, I had to say, wait a minute, Nubia, you got to remember to breathe. And in that way, for me, it is actually, I breathe through my nose, but it is an open mouth. And I know people that work out have, you know, realized that it's a release, but it's that power. I have to take in that energy and release it out in order to kind of power through. So those are some of my current self-care practices, but the breath is still there. Can't get away from the breath.
Who else would like to add? What does your self-care routine look like? Maybe hourly or daily?
I can add into that.
Okay.
Nature, going outside is a big one for me. Grounding in nature and actually putting your feet in the ground. That is a big one. Breathing outside and not on my phone and leaving the phone inside is one that I try to do every single day, that I feel is a big part of my self-care routine. But also working with energy is a big one. And I think that kind of goes with working with breath also, and the one and the same. It could be as simple as just putting my hands on my heart and just really feeling that warmth of my hands under my heart. It's a very simple, act of when we're just feeling it in our chest, or sometimes I'm feeling it in my throat, and I'll just give myself some love. And that's that energy, our own energy working back into us. So I think those two things that I would say are pretty potent with combining breath, because they're all still working with that energetic space between us all. So yeah, that's
Mhm.
what it works.
I really want to highlight what you said about maybe it's just putting our technology down. A revolutionary act of self-care could literally just be timeouts from our technology, putting the phone off, right? Or not having, not just doing no screen time for kids, but no screen time for ourselves as a way to reset our bodies. I want to tie into that to say, what about somebody that may be suffering from actual diagnoses, like a mental health condition like PTSD or OCD or depression or anxiety? Can somebody, like, what would be some support that you would suggest that somebody can do to help if they have one of those diagnoses? Like, how do we support people to do self-care when there might be actual diagnoses that make us feel like we can't do that?
It's like what you said. It's a mental thing. So knowing that it's a mental thing, I never talk to my constituents or anyone about their diagnosis or whatever ailment that they claim. Because to me, that's not natural. What's natural is health. Like, being healthy is not revolutionary. It's nature. Grass grows. That's nature. And we, when we don't think about breathing, we breathe. It's natural to be healthy. To be unhealthy, that's not even natural. That to me is a retardation of nature. So what I do and suggest is to saturate yourself with natural nature stuff. Food, natural foods, get around some children, some animals, saturate yourself in great music. Play some great music. Music is the one thing that works 100% of our brain. Play some great music. Maybe turn on 528 hertz frequencies and play those in the background of your life while you're cleaning the kitchen, or clean up your house. Do things that are natural, simple, like we said earlier. Those little bitty things add up tremendously. The ailments people have come from consistent mental thoughts that are manifesting in the body over time. So we want to shift that paradigm and let nature. I get people into nature, and I trust nature is healing. So that's my suggestion.
So even if we have a diagnosis or something, that we can still know that we can include other practices in addition, and just start where we are, basically, that where we are is good and we can always keep learning and expanding.
Absolutely. Where
Suzy.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on this a little bit, because I have been diagnosed with some of these before. And so this has been a 2-decade path for me. I come to this space out of a space of womb grief, child loss, and a lot of other life things. And so I had diagnosis after diagnosis after diagnosis placed on me as life goes on. And for me, a big one was finding support in community and other people who are also maybe going through these experiences. And that can be really hard, especially now when we're in a really isolated space. But we also, again, going back even to what Akhu said, just not putting that diagnosis and saying that breath is for everybody. Everything that we do is for everybody. And it took me doing the breath and doing the energy work and repeatedly coming back to it, even when I wasn't feeling it, because sometimes you're just not going to, and it's going to take you some time to come back and do those little things to build up to the big things, to the point where now I've dropped under all those labels. I don't consider myself under any of those labels for myself, but it took me being on medicine. It took me on being diagnosed. It took me trying to find all these little things that would work. And yeah, I think it's really important not to stick into the diagnoses, so that if somebody comes to you and they're like, I have this, you're not saying, well, I have the solution for your depression, or, because those are also very valid. And the line between wellness and the medical community is getting kind of blurred in some spaces right now. And I think that while we feel a certain way, we still don't want to invalidate somebody's experience and emotional time, that, you know, where they're at that time and space in their life. So.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, that no matter what we're diagnosed with, that we can always start with our breath and know that we can improve and move along a continuum where something that might have been debilitating can become less and less. And that any choice, whether we're taking medication and doing daily mindfulness practices, that all of them can cohabitate, that it's not one or the other.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes doing all of the above to figure it out. You know, everybody's path is so uniquely different. We're made up so uniquely, you know, radiantly beautiful, and everybody's path is very different in that way. So yeah, sometimes it takes going through having those labels and going through knowing that that's not working for you, and doing the little steps and just coming back home, coming back to it. The one thing that we have is our breath. The one thing that we have, as long as we're breathing, we're still alive. And there's not a lot of people, there's a lot of people that are not here, and they haven't continued that, because, you know, it's easy to get stuck in our experiences, and it's easy to get stuck in this hurt space. But as long as we could take that breath, that's another chance for us to clear and move one step further. So yeah.
Yeah, and Nubia, if you would mind adding here, I know like even something as simple as, like, I don't want to say as simple, but like ADHD, it can really prevent, say, a level of focus. And, you know, working with children, you've found other ways to support self-care routines when it might seem challenging.
Yes. I definitely wanted to add, and more so as a tip, because I'm a certified yoga instructor, but this is by no means medical advice. But in situations where there is an increase of hyperactivity or anxiety, a breath that we typically go to and that we've been talking about is like long, deep breathing. And that's absolutely effective. But sometimes you have to meet, you know, a situation where it's at. So you might have to breathe a little bit faster pace. So there's a breath. Well, actually, I would say for children, you would just speed up the breath. So a little bit faster than, you know, a short inhale and exhale, you would speed it up just a little bit. For teens, adults, this would be called rapid fire breathing or breath of fire. And what that does is it just helps you kind of key into your breath, right? The reminder that your breath is there until you can get to a state or space of regulation, and then come down to that long, deep breathing. Alternatively, kind of similar, if you are in a state where you are depressed, then you would use this rapid fire breathing to increase your energy, right? To take in that life force. And Akhu said this earlier, to kind of wake you up. So those tools are available when either the parent or the teacher can help the child kind of key into where they are. But knowing, you know, are they feeling anxious or are they feeling down is key, and knowing which tool to implement. Because as you said, saying just breathe and someone's getting started, they may not know where to go. So it's important, you just have to meet the children where they are.
So there's specific different types of techniques can really help us depending on if we're feeling ourselves more anxious or low energy and the depressed. And so when you get the right support and community or the right teachers, or you're participating in events like One Breath Chicago, we can learn that there's various techniques depending on the life situation or what we're experiencing in our bodies.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. To piggyback and kind of wrap up this area a little bit, what about like chronic pain or like a chronic or maybe even terminal condition that somebody might have? Are there mindfulness or breath practice or self-care techniques that you might suggest if somebody finds themselves in kind of like a terminal situation?
I personally, if a person told me that they were terminal, I would only let them speak it. But like you said, Suzy, to not invalidate them, I would not speak of that. However, in my mind, I don't believe nature works like that. It doesn't have expiration dates on it. Nature has the ability, the body is very forgiving. And I've seen it. I've seen people destroy themselves for years and then put themselves back together, and the body forgave them in days. And I'm positive minded. What's the word? What's the word where you're not negative?
Positive?
We'll go
Optimistic?
Optimistic. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Liz. I'm optimistic. So I'm going to approach every situation with an optimistic heart and an open heart. Not going to invalidate you, but if you're working with me, guess what? I know you want to be sad and be preparing to die, but we about to have a good time. And we're going to connect with the breath, and we're going to see what happens. And if we're still doing this in 10 years, hey, if you decide to get out of here, at least you'll do it in a peaceful way and with ease, because part of life sometimes can be death. And it's to accept it gracefully, it shows in the breath. If you're panicking, it's going to show in the breath. So no matter what stage of life a person's at, it's always a perfect time to connect with your breath and smooth it out and calm it out and just be okay with right now.
I love that. And I also want to highlight, Akhu, that what you're pointing out is that self-care is our mindset, that we can actually train, that a part of our daily routines can be positive affirmations, things we're telling ourselves, that is in and of itself a self-care practice.
In my opinion, GuruNischan, that is the most important practice. What you say to yourself mentally and audibly is everything. You are setting your brain waves on brain paths that are going to follow what you're saying and what you're thinking. So if I'm constantly every day appreciating my body and speaking it, I appreciate my arms, my kidneys. Good job today, liver. If I'm motivating myself in this manner on a consistent basis, my body gonna hear it, feel it, and as a result of these powerful words, my body is going to express that same energy I'm putting into it. So yeah, speak life. That is the key. A lot of people have been diagnosed with things that now they hold on to like a blanket or a teddy bear. Like, this my cancer, or this my diabetes, or this my ADHD people. But in reality, we're unconditioned. We don't have any set way of being other than joyous, the way that we are when we're born.
Yeah, and that as we do more breath work and more self-care, we can experience ourselves as that, as opposed to experiencing ourselves more as the diagnosis that seems to kind of be strangling perhaps our experience. I've heard breath repeatedly as a really important self-care practice. I've heard journaling, affirmations, mindset, right? What are a few other highlights that we could help our listeners really pinpoint other ideas of self-care, moving our bodies?
Oh,
What
of course.
else?
Of course. Well, I'm a dancer, so I'm always going to recommend moving. Dance is fun. But one thing that came up that I wanted to remind everybody that I think is really important during this time of physical distancing is self-hugs, like really being able to hug. Yes, hug and love on yourself. At a minimum for 20 seconds, right? At a minimum. and you can do this. Yes, doesn't it feel good, right? Squeeze really tight. You can breathe with this. This is something that, you know, it's not new, but intuitively this came to me to share with my daughter, because as a little one, she was super huggy in school and, you know, before COVID. And so I had to say, well, what can she do? Okay, she can hug her teacher, but she can hug herself. So we have to remember we can hug ourselves, right? The breath in the body is self-sustaining, and we have all the tools. We have so many faculties like self-massage. We can love and touch ourselves.
Beautiful. Real quick, just another takeaway, what we can help our listeners incorporate for their self-care.
Well, for me, I found, especially during the pandemic, that routine is helpful for self-care. And it's not expecting perfection. We're all going to miss a day, right? We're all going to have those days where things don't happen in the way we anticipate. But I found so much value in getting up early, or not even early in the morning, but just at a consistent time every day, at making sure that I've showered. Because let's be honest, at the beginning of the pandemic, we might not all have showered and gotten dressed every day. And at least I still have, like, you know, I have my like dress pajamas now. Like, these are the things I wear at home. Yeah. And then there's nighttime pajamas. But finding those spaces where I can carve out routine for myself with forgiveness, meditation, daily meditation practices for myself, which include breathing, but can also simply be folding the laundry, setting down, like we talked about before, setting down technology, turning things off, taking a mundane task and allowing it to become a mindfulness practice, allowing it to become a practice in presence, if you will, washing the dishes. Like, I just stare out of the back window and wash my dishes every day and load that dishwasher and try to, through that routine, take care of myself. So again, I think it just ties back to simplicity. It ties back to being present, and it ties back into just finding those small opportunities multiple times throughout your day to practice routine and to give yourself a little predictability, because humans don't love change, even though that's the only guaranteed thing in life is change. But it allows us to move through those changes with grace and to also give ourselves a little bit of predictability for those spaces between change.
Thank you, Liz. Suzy, can you give us a takeaway, specifically anything you want to highlight for ways to incorporate our self-care, but also specifically for adults who identify as female? What would be a self-care practice?
Sure. So I just want to say that I identify as a female, but I do work with, and there's many people in my space who identify as a female and don't have a womb, and females, and people who have wombs who are not females. And so, and I think that experience can be sometimes muddied a little bit, because I work a lot in the womb sacral space with people that have wombs. And so a really great one that I love to incorporate for any kind of just lower belly love that you need to give yourself is just simply taking your hands and placing them on your lower belly, on your womb space, and breathing into that space. Like, really envision and feel your stomach inflating and deflating, and also knowing that our hands are an extension of our heart. And so, yeah, give yourself some love right there into that space. And also, what I found to be really important, especially during this time, is community. There's something really powerful about being witnessed in our really unique experiences with the body that we have and all the things that come along with that. There's a different kind of pain that can happen. There's a different type of grief that can happen, and being witnessed in community with other like-minded people is just, yeah, I think that's probably one of my biggest takeaways from this space, is give your sacral womb space all that love, and communing with other people who can witness you and see your tears and not wipe those tears away when they fall.
Thank you for that. Akhu, would you mind commenting on a self-care takeaway for those who identify as male?
Sure. So for my brothers, you know, it's not, I think that these takeaways traverse sexes. So male, female, however you identify, to find, I give simple directives that work. So what I do, you got a lot going on in your life. I don't know what your life consists of, but I do know you got 24 hours. In that 24 hours, I'm asking you to take 30 seconds, literally only 30 seconds, and take one breath. If you decide to keep going and take 2 breaths or 20 breaths or 200 breaths, do you. But all I'm asking, commit to 30 seconds a day. And no matter, you know, what's going on, just, you know, set a time or don't set a time, do it organically, whatever. Just always keep that in mind that at some point in my day, I have to stop everything I'm doing, focus my thoughts on my breath, and breathe it. One thing, real quick, my last takeaway is that one thing that I've learned and studied and come to find is that it's physiologically impossible for people to consciously think and consciously breathe at the same time. And we can try it right now. You can try it, you can't do it. Like, you can't worry about what I'm gonna do tomorrow and take a conscious breath. So you in every breath, in every day, every moment, we're getting choices. And when we take our choice and use it to breathe, you know, it adds to our life. But sometimes we stop, we think, and we have these thoughts. Oh, well, what if this happened? And everything freezes. And, you know, we get caught in that. And we, as probably all of us on this call, we, you know, of course we go through it too, but we have the mindset to get out of that. Well, there are people living their whole lives this way. Their parents lived their lives this way and passed away that way. So we're encountering a world where 30 seconds a day would be majorly transformative in people's lives.
Yes, thank you. Nubia, can you give us a few takeaways specifically on self-care and children, working with children?
Thank you. Let me see. I want to offer you guys something new. I would say this is for the parents.
You tell us, you know, if it's a final highlight and you want the children listening or parents listening, kind of what's this final takeaway that you want someone to hear that says, what about self-care in a child's life?
So I'm going to go back to the theme, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. And the one thing I know that we haven't said that my daughter and I practice is gratitude. So we always end our night with 3 gratitudes if we don't have time for anything else. So that's what I would say. Instilling that and seeding that in your children is a great self-care practice.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And again, self-care, right? Gratitude. Liz, can you bring it to the teens, a self-care takeaway for teens listening?
Absolutely. So we will get into a breath practice for teens in a moment, but outside of that, in the work that I do with teens, what I found more than anything that gives teens a chance to reset is taking time to just stop and be still without video games, without books, without homework, without anything else, to just sit or lay on your bed for, even if it's just going back to what Akhu said, 30 seconds, to just sit and simply do nothing is an extremely powerful practice. And time again, when I'm teaching yoga to teens, breathwork to teens, the request always is, when do we get to relaxation? And can we just do an hour of relaxation today? And they're happy if you just let them be just quietly in their space, just lay and process everything that's been happening in their lives. And I think when all of us stop and just find stillness and create that space that we've talked about, there's a lot of power in that space, and especially in the busy and chaotic, and especially in these times, the trying times for our teens.
Yeah, thank you. I think you really wrap up in a very beautiful way, in that in a world that glorifies our busyness, we can really feel a sense of unworthiness when we're not busy, and kind of really allowing ourselves to fill up this space, that we don't have to be busy to be of value, that we're of value just because we are. And by getting connected to the breath, no matter what stage of life, if you're in an adult or you're in an elderly phase, even, the awareness of breath brings us a present moment attention and an appreciation for the things we are in control of, which isn't much, right? And so in a world where there's lots of external chaos, we can find moments of stillness by really being intentional with our daily self-care practices and using breath as a starting point. And I want to offer a tip or a technique for kind of our seasoned folks that are listening, whether you're in adult phase or even elderly phase, that really start where you are. It can feel very, very discouraging to learn a lot of new things when you have a lifetime. You feel like, well, I've done this for 60 years. I can't change now. And the truth is that the science is showing that when we use our breath, we're affecting parts of the brain and the physiology that can create improvement very, very fast. Like instantaneously, you can feel a difference in your body just by putting awareness on the breath. So beyond technique, beyond all the specific things of needing to do something specific, start where you are. Put your hand on your body, get comfortable in your chair, whatever your chair might be. Turn off your TV and other noises that might be around, and just notice the sound and quality of your own breath. Don't judge if it's a good one or a bad one. Just spend time listening to the sound of your own breathing. And that itself affects parts of the brain and the brain-body communication in a way that can improve quality of life, our mental health, the way we relate and communicate with those around us. So self-care can be very simple, and it can also get complex with techniques. And on that note, we get to learn a technique that can really help us practice adding breath and other mindfulness practices to our self-care routines. So with that, I want to pass this over to Liz as she closes us out with a mindful breathing practice, especially for teens. But as you heard Cassandra say earlier, it's for all of us that want to learn and really practice putting intention on our breathing. So thank you. Take it away, Liz.
Thank you so much, GuruNischan. All right, so before we get started with this breath technique, I always like to just make sure that we understand the full expansiveness of our own lungs. So what I'll ask everybody to do is just take your fingertips and see if you can find, and you can shrug your shoulders up to locate them, but see if you can find your collarbones here. And some of us get really uncomfortable touching our collarbones, so if that doesn't work for you, don't touch them. Plain and simple, right? Say all self-care. If it doesn't work, don't do it. Give it a try and then let it go. But see if you can find those collarbones. And right here, know that just behind these collarbones, this is where the tops of your lungs begin. And then track down and see if you can start to gently push on your rib cage and find your lowest ribs here. So they move out towards the sides of your body a little bit. And right here, oh, I can dig in there, right at the lowest ribs, you're going to find the bottoms of your lungs. And your lungs really follow the path of your rib cage here. And below the lungs, there is a flat muscle known as your diaphragm. And when you breathe in, that diaphragm is going to push down into your abdominal cavity, which is why your belly gets bigger when you breathe in. It's pushing those organs out. We need more space. And when we breathe out and the lungs will shrink, that diaphragm moves back to its flat state. So it goes down when we inhale and comes up as we exhale. Really quick anatomy lesson. You don't have to remember any of that at all to be able to do this next breath, but sometimes it's powerful just to know what's happening. Plain and simple, when we inhale, our two lungs are going to inflate, and when we exhale, they deflate. And as Nubia kind of alluded to earlier, we're going to use a tool that's going to help us visualize this. This is a Hoberman sphere, or quite often in kids and teen yoga circles, we call this the breath ball. And it opens as we breathe in, and this one gets rather large. I love using this one on the computer because it really fills the whole screen up. And as you exhale, much like your lungs, the ball closes and contracts. And so we're going to use this to help us see our breath today. Now, I'm assuming that most of the people watching this aren't just like reaching over, except for maybe Nubia, and like grabbing their breath ball. So in order to engage yourself in this and to really start to experience your own breath, I'm going to invite everybody to hold your hands loosely in front of your chest, shoulders relaxed, elbows down. And when you're breathing in, keyword, when you are breathing in, you're going to inhale and open your hands up. And when you're exhaling and breathing out, you're going to close your hands in. All right? So it's like you have your own ball. Now, we're going to start with a rapid breath here. We're going to meet everybody where you're at. I'm going to just ask you how that rapid breath feels. So the breath is going to sound something like this. You're going to breathe in and out through your nose, almost like a rabbit. And I'm going to move the ball, and we're going to move our hands in accordance with this. All right, so hands ready, ball ready. We're going to take some rapid breaths just to see how we feel. And pause. And just notice how you feel. 5 seconds. You might feel a little bit lightheaded. You might feel energized, awake, ready to move. All right. And once you've noticed how you feel, really important thing, avoid judging it. A lot of times, especially as teens, we feel judged or like we need to judge ourselves. And let's be real, it's not just teens that feel that. This carries through our entire lifetime with us. So no judgment for how you're feeling. There's no right or wrong. The important piece is just to notice. Now we're going to slow those breaths down. My breath might be faster than your breath. My breath might be smaller than your breath. That's why you're using your hands. You're going to move with your own breath and feel this happening. So let's slow this down. Take a slow inhale that feels good for your body and a slow exhale that feels good for your body. And just do that a few times. You might even close your eyes so that the ball doesn't influence how you're breathing. And as you breathe, I'm going to ask you not to notice what you feel, but instead to notice if how you feel changes. Count out 3 more of your own breaths. And when you are done with your 3 breaths, just relax your hands wherever they're comfortable. You can keep your eyes closed if you want to, or just simply look at one spot. And take a few breaths to see if how you feel has changed. And through the breath and through noticing how we're feeling and what our present moment experience is, we take just a few minutes to find mindfulness and self-care. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. We appreciate that very much. So I just want to thank everyone on the panel today. Thank you for joining us. There were so many wonderful self-care tips. Also on our website for Light of Loving Kindness. If you don't know what works for you, if you're new to this self-care journey, if you're new to mindfulness and perhaps thinking different thoughts about yourself, you can go to our website and you can find videos there with different modalities, journaling and meditation and dance and mindfulness. And I'm sure everyone on the panel as well has a website with materials that you can go to. I wanted to share my story. Everyone was sharing. I will share mine very, very quickly. I am a person that has a diagnosis of PTSD. And I see a therapist and I see my doctor, but I practice, or I should say, and I practice self-care every day. self-care is my primary. So I just want to say to those of you out there that are experiencing these things, depression, anxiety, perhaps you have diagnoses of things that you have really, really been focused on. As everyone on the panel said, add self-care to it. Add the affirmations to it. As Akhu said, think positive, think optimistically, and begin your self-care journey if this is new for you. So again, thank you for joining us. This is Light of Loving Kindness. My name is Cassandra Powell, and also for Utopia Connect Foundation with Muriel Baptiste. Bye. We'll see you next week.